Truck drivers, what's a creepy story you've got from the middle of nowhere? My dad drove a truck between Edinburgh and London and tells this story often. He was driving down the motorway and looked to his right. Saw a woman with a mistrunchable bun, as he describes it, staring at him with a terrified expression from a car next to him. Before he really knows how to react, the car pulls off at the next exit and my dad, although shaken, carries on. About half an hour later, a different car with a different driver pulls alongside my dad, with the same woman in the passenger's seat, with the same expression on her face. My dad thinks fuck this and plans to pull into the next services to report us, even if it's nothing misunderstanding. Better to be safe than sorry, right? Anyway, the car disappears before he can get any details. Plate CTC, and he thinks there is no point calling the police with no details, so he carries on driving. Literally about 4 hours later, almost in London, yet another car pulls alongside him with the same woman. Same mistrunchable hair. Same terrified expression. Except this time she appears to be screaming at my dad through the window. So my dad pulls over into a lay-by and calls the police. Apparently they have received 3 other calls about the same woman car in the same area in the last few minutes. It is unfortunately anticlimactic, as he never heard anything more about it, but he didn't see her again, and although he kept an eye on the news, didn't see anything about it. Hopefully it's just a giant coincidence. Who knows? As a crew guy of an off-road racing team in Baja California, Mexico, I got to test drive some rigs and trucks. So technically truck driver. We were driving down south along Sea of Cortez with a buddy at night at this 4 hours dirt road to Gonzaga, which is pretty much in the middle of f***ing nowhere in the desert. And we see the lights of a car behind coming down fast and now effectively tailing us, and the bastard had bar mount headlights on top, or what seemed like it, which are super bright. It's normal, always, that locals and gringos get wasted in the nearest, now former Duke of it, Spring Breaker town, and then go down this road super fast to test their rigs since there's no police there. Cute, so I try waving him off to get the guide to keep them lights low since he's blinding us, but he isn't slowing down a bit nor turn his roof lights off, and it was a dangerous super dark road. Finally, near a curve near the shore, I found a spot to bail off the road without crashing, and we see lights passing by us super fast and going straight to the curve, and we were like, that's it. He is going to crash down to the sea, but the lights didn't fall and kept going straight into the beach and the sea, and then pitched up abruptly to the night sky and disappeared. We didn't say a word for a minute or so, and then my buddy goes, "Did you see it?" And I say, "The f***ing flying truck." Didn't talk about any more, as simply it didn't make sense to talk about it, or with anyone else when we arrived. FedEx contractor. I'm in one of those big box trucks. Anyways, I finished a long delivery day, and I swear to whatever f***ing gods you believe in that I was hearing voices in my cab. It wasn't the radio. It wasn't my tinnitus. It wasn't my subconscious. I was hearing whispered voices in my right ear that were coming from the passenger's seat. The voices continued even after I had gotten back to my hub, clocked out, and hopped in my own car to go home. They only stopped when I left the parking lot. It only happened that night. I still have no f***ing idea what the hell it was, because I had ruled everything else out. The obligatory not a truck driver but a second-hand story I heard. My great uncle drove big trucks. Living in the middle of nowhere, sometimes people would leave trash on the road, and since he had a big truck, he'd just smash into said boxes or paper and continue on. One day he was coming up on a cardboard box and just had the urge to swerve and miss this one. He misses it and passes by with no incident. Looks in his rear view to look at the box, and out pops a kindergarten age little kid that just heads back to their house as nothing happened. Driving through a national park in the middle of the night, going through a slow stretch at about 30 km/h. Every so often I think I see something put the my window and beside me. Just a glimpse of movement. When I arc though, I don't catch it. Finally, on about the third time, I whip my head around, and this time I recognize it's a huge black wolf following alongside my truck just off the highway. I only saw it for a few seconds before Jay had to focus back on the road, but it was absolutely lovely yet unsettling. My uncle was a long haul trucker for almost 30 years. He did a lot of runs through Texas and said that some of the smaller towns gave him a weird vibe. Like he absolutely didn't belong there as an outsider and should just make his delivery and leave a sap. I've been driving almost 30 years. Weirton. WV is a town that gave me a weird vibe. Those people didn't like outsiders. And they didn't keep it a secret. Vibe was so hostile I couldn't even buy anything at a grocery store. Just went back to my truck at the steel mill. I worked at the Nevada nuclear test site. Decommissioning old buildings. How much time do you have, lol? One of the creepiest days was when I was sent with an end-dump load of non-hazmat material to the general landfill which I had never been to before. Somehow I missed the turn and ended up at an armed gate with machine guns pointed at me. Very uncomfortable. Once I explained my mistake, I was quite hastily turned around. Still not knowing exactly where my turn was, a very nondescript desert road was what I was looking for. I headed back. I turned on the next dirt road I came to and ended up at the sedan crater. Went and smoked a cigarette on the observation deck all by my lonesome. My hands were still shaking from the run-in with the armed guards. Another was when delivering a hazmat load to Area 25. They had begun using robots to guard the area. They were still in beta testing and someone may have just been F-king with me. But the damn thing perceived my truck as a threat and blocked my ability to move. I went inside the building and 15 minutes later it had moved on. Driving through rural NM. Bisty area with the crazy melted rock look. No plants or anything. Just rock and sand. Monsoon time. Raining cats and dogs just pouring so hard you could barely see going 20 miles per hour. Thunder and lightning just rocking the car. Sometimes turning into hail and pounding you. Just a nasty storm. Came around a corner. And the whole countryside legit on fire. Like 20 feet tall flames. Hundreds of yards in all directions while pouring rain at dusk. Just rocks and dirt wildly on fire in the pouring rain. Just slowly drove on. Was totally freaky and surreal. Honestly thought I may have hallucinated it. Check the news. A propane truck slid off the road going way too fast and apparently busted open pretty violently and lit on fire. Never saw the truck. Must have been behind something. Felt a bit bad after about not stopping. Not a truck driver. But I have one weird story from when I was a kid. My parents always took us on long road trips every summer and my dad liked to take meandering routes through rural towns to see all the tourist traps. One trip. We passed through a little town in Illinois. The kind you miss if you sneeze. This one had mannequins. Every house and business was only populated by mannequins. I don't remember seeing any people. Everything looked maintained and clean. So someone was at least caring for the place. There weren't any signs or anything indicating it was for tourists. Just a convenience store bait shop with a sign reading "Eat here. Get worms." I've got a few. Being stalked by. My gut says a skinwalker outside of Cedar City. But I've told that one elsewhere on Reddit. One of the worst was when I was parked at a dirt turnout in the Arizona desert between Cameron and Page for the night. This is out in Navajo country, I believe. About 2 AM I woke up to scratching at the window of my sleeper. Went on for about 15 minutes. I'm sitting there in the dark scared to death wondering what the fuck's happening with my Bowie knife in my hand. After it ended I waited another 15 minutes or so before I opened my curtain and looked out the windows. Couldn't see anything outside and I was still the only one parked there. Got out the next morning and all I found were some footprints coming to the truck and eventually walking back into the desert. Haven't parked there since. I always stop at a small truck stop in Cameron now. Not me. But an ex-girlfriend's cousin's uncle, yeah. I know it's a friend of a friend situation. But it was a well-known tale among the family. He was driving on a Mexican road at night. He felt a call of nature. So he parked on the sideway and jumped off the truck. He walked to relieve himself and while doing that he felt a presence beside him. He pointed his flashlight at his side and saw, standing beside him, a small deformed person. It was naked and had his hair bloated. And he was standing just there. The driver, ex-GF's cousin's uncle, ran away to his truck. Jumped in. and drove away from there. There's been a lot since I talked with my ex. We're cool but not too much in touch. But if you want to know more, I could ask her about the fuzzy details. Not me. But my mom told me a story about one late night out trucking. Her husband was sleeping in the back, and she was starting to get super tired and struggling to stay awake. She heard another trucker on the CV and started chatting with him. He helped her stay awake for the run until she stopped off at a truck stop until her husband could take over. And X200B. That next morning, she told her husband what happened, and he told her the CV was broken, and that was impossible. Truck driving. Many years ago I did that. Long hours. And always tired because the dispatcher always thought you were behind. But there were some good stories. This one guy, when he saw another company truck at a rest stop and the driver was sleeping over the steering wheel, he would put on this gorilla mask he had and stand on the running board and knock on the window. Of course the driver invariably almost suffered a heart attack. And a couple even chased him around threatening great bodily harm. I was sitting in my truck one day waiting to load in a line of other trucks. One guy opens his door and stands on the running board like he is pissing off the side. Except he has this huge dildo in his hand. The next truck coming around the corner, the driver stared wide-eyed at this guy, who then proceeded to casually tap the huge penis against the hot exhaust pipe as if he is shaking off a couple of piss drops. The other driver almost hit the building. Well, one time I delivered 5 gallons of tomato juice to a dilapidated suburban California ranch house in the middle of the night. The guy who came to the door was wearing all black and had greased back black hair, and the house was lit by candles and Bela Lugosi's Dead was playing in the background. Luckily I'm not a virgin. By any stretch. Reno. NV. A place on the north side of town. Way off the freeway towards an old military road. I got there early at like 1 AM. They didn't open till 6 AM. The facility was closed, so no one around, and I just pulled into the lot and parked off to the side. So I went to sleep and was woken shortly after to someone knocking on the door window. Firmly to the point the truck shook. I jump out of bed thinking they are there already and want to offload me early. I get to the door and no one is there. So I step down thinking they are behind the trailer looking at the door seal or something. No one around. I look under the truck and around, absolutely no one. No wind or bad weather. Not another person around. I jump in the truck and pull out of there as fast as I could and went and parked in a nearby truck stop. Still can't explain it. I mean, I guess I can justify I could have imagined the sound, but the truck shaking was definitely real, so I don't know. Grandpa drove rig for most of his life. A lot of times when he would sleep in Detroit he'd be woken up the sound of fire trucks putting out house fires that were from arson. Can confirm. When I was little my family used to play a game when we drove through the areas you're talking about. Some areas in Detroit are actually really nice. And we would play a game where we would see who could count the most burned houses before we got to our destination. One time I got to almost 60. Arson is a huge problem here. I was on a long haul. Eastbound. Nothing but me. The miles. And the night. On runs like this I fall into a zone with the hum of the tires and vibration of the road coaxing me into a rhythm. Not noticing details along the way. Illinois. Indiana. The long drag of Ohio. Pennsylvania. The miles rolled on. Slowly I realized something had changed. I was seeing lights. The farther I went the more there were. Suddenly I jerked to attention with the realization what was happening. Oh god. Oh fuck. I was in Philadelphia. Creepy bugger who lived on a ranch in the middle of nowhere wanted to show me his dopey man cave basement and wouldn't stop hitting on me while I'm just trying to deliver some damn stone. Thank FCK I had my whinge bar and pepper spray. I literally dropped tea as fast I could cause I already unstrapped and had my forklift down. Told the boss I'll never go back after. Only reason I didn't flat out run for it anyways was cause I was driving a 3-ton death machine and I didn't see a gun. My lil forklift is quick. I'm a fucking tiny ass chick and the company sent out a gym bro ripped co-worker next. That dude got the same treatment from the creepy guy and thought he was gonna get kidnapped too. Ugh. In like 3 years doing this shitty, that's the only time I've been worried like that. They stopped sending people after David came back scared too. Probably not the type of creepy op is looking for, but whatevs. Not a truck driver, but was on the final leg of a 16-hour drive from Florida to northern Ohio with a caravan of about 8 cars and half of us drivers, most of us up for 12 plus hours at this point and everyone else in the cars sound asleep. Swear we saw a man walking his dog on the side of I-75 in the middle of nowhere between Cincinnati and Dayton at 3 AM. To this day still don't know if that was real or we were hallucinating. But either way it was pretty creepy. Not a truck driver, but this still haunts me. Was driving from Chicago to Tampa to move with my dad. Somewhere in the middle of Georgia at 2 AM. I'm mindlessly driving when my dad yells, "Yo, pay attention to the f***ing red lights." Tons of cars ahead of us are stopped. Smoke in the air. We slowly approach and first thing we see is a little car completely engulfed in flames. Then all of a sudden an 18-wheeler starts bouncing. Like how some people put hydraulics in their little pimp cars. Big boy was bouncing with flames coming out the back. I honked at the rubberneckers in front of me because I didn't want to see the explosion, and there were already 12 cars pulled over. Too many cooks in the kitchen. The most surreal thing I had ever seen. Someone later told us it was the brake system. Looked like a demon-possessed truck. Not exactly creepy, but definitely terrifying. My father was a truck driver and he was driving through a smaller town in Northern California hauling tomatoes. Suddenly he got incredibly tired. Wasn't low on sleep or deprived at all, but ended up passing out at the wheel. Last thing he saw was the light of the town in front of him. He woke up about 2 hours later on the other side of town. Perfectly parked on the side of the road. He swears something was looking out for him that night. Not my story, but my mom's. She used to drive long trips to Mississippi. One day she drove over the Mississippi River and saw some huge animal swimming in the water. She says it was almost as big as the trailer she was hauling. Not a truck driver. But I was field merchandiser, so I drive all over to different grocery stores. One route was all a Walmart in West Virginia. In between Charlestown and Beckley I decided to do no tolls since I had no cash coins on me. The views are amazing and I was just driving down these small roads mesmerized. I stopped off the road next to a creek to get out and take some pics. It was in the middle of the afternoon BTW. As I'm looking up the stream I see 3 tall, 15 feet, white crosses on the other side. This struck me as very strange and I instantly felt like I probably shouldn't be outside of my vehicle. It gave me a strong True Detective Season 1 vibe. As I'm processing this, 2 figures emerge from trees near the crosses. They were just a father and son and probably harmless. But I immediately noped right out of there and got in my car and pulled away. I was in the middle of absolutely nowhere in Texas and getting so tired, and there were absolutely no lights anywhere around me but the stars. I guess I kinda messed up a turn at one of those forks in the road. When a calm voice came loud over the CB. "Driver. Looks like it's time for you to pull over and grab some sleep." So I did. I'm not ignoring Invisible Citizen Band geezers. One time I was driving a big truck full of mailers to Nick from Atlanta in February. In the middle of the night, like 2 AM, we are in the middle of nowhere, we are cruising, and my girlfriend passenger suddenly sits up straight with a "pull over now." So I'm like, "What?" She's like, "Now. Pull over right now." So I do. We sit there for a few minutes and I'm all WTF. And she's like, "I dunno." Okay, whatever, let's just keep going. It was a feeling, an intuition. So we pull back on the highway. Crest the next hill and before us is a huge accident with wheels still spinning on turned over cars. Smoke, fire. It just happened. No cops yet. We would have been in that many car wreck for certain if we hadn't pulled off. Lesson. Always trust your girl's intuition. My uncle was driving between Great Falls and Helena at around 3 AM. He had his high beams on as it was a lonely drive and quiet highway. In the distance he saw something cross the median and started to slow his approach, thinking it was a deer. As he got closer, He realized it was standing up and so he slowed down to about 30 miles per hour. He realized what it was and started to panic. A man in blue coveralls with a pig's head. Not a mask, but literally the head of a pig on his shoulder. My uncle moved to the left lane and as he passed, pig head lunged at the truck. My uncle didn't stop to check if he'd grabbed until he was in the safety of Helena. Nothing was out of the ordinary there but on that stretch of road now, he doesn't slow down for anything. Well, nothing paranormal but something out of a strange biology book. I was driving a person in my care from the clinic out of state back home. It started to rain and I was on a very rural road due to a detour and frogs were coming out onto the road in droves. The whole road was jumping and moving. The car started to slide around on the frog carcasses. I had to drive about 20 miles per hour just to stay reliably on the road. I must have killed thousands of frogs that day. Not a creepy one per se, but anytime I haul through Navajo Nation of New Mexico it's f***ing terrifying. One night it's pitch black and there's an old man as aged as death walking along the right side and he stops and turns to hitchhike, but as I get closer he's just staring at me and moving closer from the shoulder into the road. I have to swerve to the left not to kill him. My dad was a truck driver and I cam along on short trips on weekends, and the one day we're cruising along and we hear a helicopter. A minute later there's a air convoy just flying above us about 400 feet up. But it wasn't just like 2 or 3 helicopters, it was like 30 or 40. I was really young so military helicopters were really cool. Not a truck driver, but one night my friends and I were driving through a lightless valley around 1 AM. Suddenly my headlights catch on an object in the middle of the road and I shit you not, it's a man made out of tumbleweed. We don't even have tumbleweed where I live. It appeared very suddenly and I was so confused by its shape that I didn't brake or swerve. As we collided with it, my friend and I in the front seat both screamed. But nothing. No impact. We drove right through it, but it was just air. Both of my friends in the backseat were very confused why the 2 of us in the front screamed suddenly. So like, I know it wasn't just me. My friend saw it too. I got stuck in between 2 remote towns in the middle of the mountains at night during winter. This was in northern BC in Canada. It was about 10 PM at night and I couldn't make it up a hill in the snow. No cell phone reception and I'm out on the side of the road in pitch black using my cell phone as a light while I put the chains on. Got them on and still couldn't get up the hill. Waited for a snowplow to drive by and followed him up the hill and still couldn't make it. Finally I had to give up and drive back into the town I had passed about 45 minutes back behind me and stay in a hotel. It felt creepy AF putting those chains on in the snow and pitch black. I was so angry at my dispatch for even forcing me to make it back when they did, as I knew it would be tough in the snow. Things could have been so much worse than they ended up being. Not exactly relevant but still creepy AF. My dad is a trucker and about 20 some years ago, a woman committed suicide by running out in front of him. He said that every night around the time she died, the cab of his truck would drop a few degrees in temperature and he felt a presence. He said this went on for a few weeks and finally he spoke out to her and said he forgave her and wished that she had peace. He said he never experienced the eeriness again. Making the long drive back to our university one midnight, my friend and I both saw a freakishly huge dog or wolf looking creature on the side of the road. Eyes glowing and everything. It had been quiet in my truck before this, but we both saw it at the same time and yelled out. We don't live in an area with wolves, so I've often thought about it. Our bet has always been some alpha dog or coyote that has grown huge in the woods. Or a bear that we both just mistook for a canine. Very much looked like a canine though. I'm a delivery driver for a florist. About 2 or 3 months ago, I had to deliver an arrangement about 2 hours drive into the country from the city near the end of my shift. When I arrive at the address, I don't see any house but these old farming sheds and a really long dirt road. I get out of the truck, grab the arrangement and walk down this dirt road. Sun is pretty much about to disappear, and I've walked about 10 minutes and am questioning whether or not I should have braved driving the truck down. I finally see this old shack with a light on. So I walk up to it. I'm about to go to the front door when I hear from around the side of the house. "Just leave it." I answer. "Does live here? Just leave it by the door. It will eventually get to them." I do so. And walk as quick as I could back to the truck. Lock it and drive away a bit quicker than normal. My dad was a long haul trucker years back. He would drive from Ontario all over the US. The one creepy encounter I remember him mentioning was as he was passing through Florida, of course. He was driving through the Everglades late into the night. Out in the middle of nowhere. No civilization for miles either way. When he notices a white figure come into the headlights or on the shoulder of the road. He slows down and there is a man completely naked coming out of the swamp. My father slows and stops in the road, thinking this guy may need help, as this man starts crossing over the road. He stops dead in front of the truck and stares at my dad. At which point my dad realizes this naked man is holding a shotgun. He stands there for a few seconds staring, holding this gun, and then continues across and disappears back into the wilderness whence he came. So many questions.